Coronation Street teased that Noah Headley's return to Weatherfield will send shockwaves through the cobbles, as old secrets and darker impulses collide with new loyalties. Under the glow of the street lamps outside the bistro, the hum of early evening chatter masked the dangerous undercurrent of a man intent on wreaking vengeance. Noah, once an unassuming acquaintance in Billy Mayhew's past, had surfaced again, and with him came whispered promises of correction and retribution aimed squarely at Theo Silverton. From the moment the torn leaflet fluttered into Todd Grimshaw's path, snagging on the wrought iron gate, and warning of a spiritual restoration event at the community center, Todd's protective instincts flared. He remembered Theo's tremulous phone calls, the hushed panic in his voice when Noah's name was mentioned. Now, under the neon glow of the bistro sign, Todd scooped up the flyer with a clenched fist. The flyer bore the image of Noah in preacher's robes, hands raised in fervent sermonizing, eyes alight with zealotry. The words, "Free to all who wish to be set free," jumped out at Todd, but so did the fine print, targeted sessions available for those struggling with same-sex attraction. Confidential and faith-based. In Todd's mind, one figure stood out as a possible accomplice, Archie Shuttleworth. Archie had been seen speaking quietly with Theo days before, and Todd had caught him surreptitiously handing Theo a slip of paper in the bistro. Perhaps Archie, affluent and well-connected within local church circles, was facilitating Noah's dark crusade. Without a second thought, Todd descended the bistro steps and hauled Billy Mayhew along by the sleeve of his cardigan. Their feet pounded the pavement, breath clouding in the cool night air, as they made their way to the community center on Coronation Street's outer bend. Billy, still in shock at the urgency in Todd's eyes, protested softly, though he knew better than to stand firm when Todd got that look. At the center's sliding doors, a muffled chanting drifted out, the low, rhythmic tone of men quietly pleading for release from their sin. Todd's heart clenched as he pushed the door open. Inside, harsh fluorescent lights revealed a scattered circle of chairs, occupied by men fidgeting, heads bowed. At the far end of the room, Noah Headley presided over the gathering like a dark Pied Piper. His voice, though calm, carried an edge of menace. "You are sinners, but tonight you can be redeemed. Let go of your shame, and embrace the path of righteousness." One by one, men rose and approached Noah, kneeling before him. He placed a hand on their heads, murmured invocations, and, according to whispered rumor, administered a prayer of correction. Todd's blood boiled. He had hoped to find Theo, his Theo, among the chairs, but instead he found only strangers under Noah's spell. When Noah caught sight of Todd's furious approach, his lips curled into a thin smile. "Ah, Todd Grimshaw," he cooed, voice dripping with false warmth. "I wondered when you'd show. As a protector of deviants, are you here to salvage your buddy Theo? Or perhaps to admit you've been misguided yourself?" The barb cut deep. Todd stepped forward, chest heaving. "This is vile," he spat. "You have no right to play God with these men's lives." Noah's gaze hardened. "I give them what they need, a chance to be whole." At that, Todd snapped. He lunged, wrapping his hands around Noah's throat in a desperate chokehold. The men in the circle stood as one, recoiling in horror, as the preacher's smug facade crumpled and his eyes bulged in panic. Billy screamed, lunging forward to pull Todd off, but Todd's grip only tightened. In that moment, a young man at the back raised his phone, the glow of its screen flickering as he captured the entire scene. Voices rose into the air, some begging Todd to stop, others urging Noah to call for help. Billy, heart pounding, finally managed to wrench Todd away. The two stumbled across the linoleum floor, Noah gasping for breath, reddened marks around his throat. Todd's chest heaved with rage, while Billy clutched his friend's arm, guiding him toward the exit. Neither spoke as they fled into the night, crashing through the back door, and leaving behind the flicker of mobile screens and the stunned silence of broken zeal. Back at number 1 Weatherfield, Eileen Grimshaw settled into her favorite armchair, the kettle's whistle echoing through the kitchen. She glanced up as the front door clicked open, and George Little shuffled inside, coat damp with evening mist. "Where's Theo?" George asked, glancing at the empty hallway. No reply came at first. Only a soft stifled sob drifting from the bedroom. Inside, Theo sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders hunched, tears staining his pillow. He knows what to say," Theo whispered when George finally approached. "He knows how to get under my skin about everything I've tried to leave behind." George sat beside him, betraying his own concern. "No one should have that power over you, son. Not after all you've been through." Just then, Todd burst into the room, Billy Mayhew trailing close behind, panic etched on both faces. Todd's eyes were bloodshot, and Billy's hands shook. "He's doing this," Todd began, voice raw. "He's really doing it, making them kneel, telling them they're sinners. And I lost it, I went too far." Theo looked up, confusion mingling with relief. "You went to stop him?" Todd nodded, tears welling. "I didn't find you in the group, but I found him. And he broke off as Billy cleared his throat. "We left before anyone called the police," Billy added quickly. "But there's footage now." Theo's expression hardened. "So it's out there." He wiped his cheeks and stood. Todd reached out, only for Theo to pull back. A hush fell between them before tender resolve replaced fear. Todd stepped closer. "I love you," he said quietly. "And I'll fight this, for you, for us." Theo's shoulders relaxed, and he allowed Todd to cradle him. They exchanged a brief, shaky kiss. George and Billy exchanged glances, each proud of the couple's resolve. For a moment, the shadows in the small bedroom seemed to recede. But the reprieve was short-lived. Later that evening, as Theo walked home from a late shift at the cafe, a familiar voice cut through the hush of the cobbles. "Theo." Noah stood under the flickering lamppost, arms folded. His grin was triumphant. "Miss me?" Theo's breath caught. "What do you want?" Noah advanced, his tone deceptively gentle. "Just to talk. You know, like old times." Theo's fists clenched at his sides. "Not tonight," he said, voice tight. But Noah's smile widened, shadowy and predatory. "Oh, I think you will. You can't hide from your past, Theo. Not when I can find you so easily." Inside the flat, Billy Mayhew, who had walked Theo partway, slipped away to retrieve a spare key. He paused at the door, eavesdropping as Theo rebuffed Noah's taunts. When Noah accused Theo of abandoning his faith and defiling himself, Billy's face flushed with protective anger. Unseen, he scurried upstairs to join Todd, who had already heard Theo's raised voice. When Theo finally stormed inside and slammed the door, Billy confronted him. "He was harassing you again," Billy exclaimed. "You can't keep doing this alone." Theo's shoulders sagged. I wanted to handle it." Billy shook his head. "Todd and we're here. You can't isolate yourself." Theo glanced at Todd, whose expression was torn between love and frustration. "I know," Theo admitted. "But sometimes it just feels easier to pretend none of this matters." That evening, a weekend open-air sermon drew a small crowd in Victoria Park. Word had spread that Noah would speak again, this time to a broader audience. Todd and Theo, joined by George and Billy, arrived just as Noah took to a makeshift podium. His voice carried across the grass. "Homosexuality is a sin," he declared, scanning the faces before him. A hush fell. Todd's blood hammered in his ears. He glanced at Theo, whose face was pale but determined. When Noah began to weave graphic tales of broken men and souls in torment, Todd could scarcely stay rooted. He lunged forward, arguing back at the platform. Security guards quickly thrust at him, but Theo pushed through, placing a restraining hand on Todd's arm. Quietly, Theo turned to Billy and George. "He tried to convert me," he said, voice shaking. "Told me I could be saved if I renounced this life." George's jaw tightened. "If you're happy with Todd, then Noah has no power over you," he said firmly. Theo met Todd's eyes. "I won't let him win," he vowed. As the crowd stirred and police arrived to calm the disturbance, Noah stepped down and slipped away, unperturbed. Yet the echo of his threats lingered. Back on the street, Theo and Todd clung to each other, while Billy and George fell into step beside them. None spoke, but the shared resolve in their silence was a vow. They would face Noah together, no matter how far he was willing to go. Unbeknownst to them, Noah had already set his next plan in motion. He had begun courting Danielle, Theo's former girlfriend and mother of his young son. With emotional leverage in hand and the police report of Todd's outburst still fresh, he intended to drive a wedge between Theo and the little boy he adored. In the coming days, the fragile peace on Coronation Street would shatter, alliances would be tested, and only the strongest bonds would survive Noah Headley's dark crusade. Under the waning light of a summer afternoon, the calm facade of Weatherfield masked a storm gathering just beneath the surface. In the days following the park confrontation, alliances had solidified and frayed in equal measure. In number 1, Theo Silverton and Todd Grimshaw sat side by side on the sofa, the air between them thick with shared resolve. Todd's gaze remained fixed on the floorboards. "I spoke to the solicitor," he said quietly. "They've drafted an injunction to keep Noah away from you and the boy. But it's not guaranteed. Danielle could contest it." His knuckles whitened around the steaming mug in his hands. Theo closed his eyes, drawing a slow breath. "Then we'll fight it. Together." His voice was steady, though inside his heart thudded like a war drum. The thought that Noah might leverage access to his son, his little pride, Jamie, chipped at Theo's composure like acid. He reached out and squeezed Todd's hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Meanwhile, Billy Mayhew busied himself at the vicarage, converting the church hall into a safe haven. Flyers promising open hearts, open minds, reading groups were plastered alongside rainbow flags and posters for free counseling sessions. He had enlisted Susan Bullough and Asha Allahan to help spread the word: coffee mornings, film nights, discussion panels, any forum in which LGBTQ+ parishioners could find a voice. Overnight, the vicarage became a beacon of solidarity. One evening, as Billy sorted through a pile of donated books, his phone buzzed. The solicitor's office. Danielle was indeed contesting the injunction, citing emotional harm to Jamie if Theo's visitation were restricted. Billy frowned, pinching the bridge of his nose. He'd known Noah would play dirty, but turning Jamie's welfare against Theo struck him as reprehensible. He dialed Todd. "They've filed a response. We need to gather statements, witnesses to Noah's harassment, evidence of his threats, and character references, especially about your role as Jamie's father." Todd sighed. "George and Eileen are ready to testify. So is the cafe manager." She heard him yelling at Theo outside the flat. "And I've got the guy who filmed me, he'll hand over the footage." "Good work." Billy smiled, despite the tension knotting his stomach. "We'll win this." That same night, under flickering streetlights, Danielle Silverton lingered outside the family court. Her features were pale, eyes shadowed with doubt. She clutched a crumpled photo of Jamie in her wallet, a snapshot of her son's bright grin. Memories of happier times with Theo surfaced, picnics in Victoria Park, bedtime stories read aloud in whispered accents, the soft echo of baby giggles. But those days felt distant, ruptured by Theo's coming out and Danielle's own heartbreak. When Danielle entered the courtroom and caught sight of Noah Headley in the gallery, leaning back smugly, arms crossed, her stomach churned. He gave her a subtle nod, and she returned a curt nod in kind. Whatever had begun as a tactical alliance had morphed into something darker. Noah's obsession with Theo had drawn Danielle into his orbit, promising legal expertise in family matters in exchange for what? His twisted vindication. Her gaze shifted to the bench, where the magistrate shuffled papers. Across the aisle, Theo and Todd sat hand in hand, flanked by George, Eileen, and Billy. Their presence radiated solidarity. Danielle's chest tightened. Was she on the wrong side of this battle? The hearing commenced. Billy stood first as a character witness, his voice unwavering. He recounted Noah's public declarations, calling homosexuality a sin and a condition to be healed, and described the park incident. Next, George and Eileen testified to their knowledge of Theo's consistent love and care for Jamie, and his unwavering commitment to their son's well-being. The cafe manager corroborated the harassment outside the flat. Todd produced the video, its shaky footage capturing the threat in stark clarity. Danielle's turn came. She rose, smoothing her skirt. Your Honor, my concern is Jamie's emotional stability. Restricting his mother's contact with his father may confuse him. She paused, glancing at Noah, whose expression burned with impatience. I want what's best for Jamie. Todd's fingers twitched. Theo gently placed a hand on his arm. The magistrate leaned forward. Miss Silverton, you are the child's mother. Why are you opposing reasonable protections against harassment? Danielle faltered, lips parting. But I'm worried about unfairness. If Mr. Silverton is barred from being with his son, her voice trailed off. The magistrate's gaze was firm. This injunction seeks to prevent Mr. Headley from contacting, he glanced at Noah, or influencing Mr. Silverton or his family. It does not affect your equal parental rights. Provided Mr. Silverton meets his obligations, visitation continues uninterrupted. A hush filled the court. Danielle's eyes welled. Theo reached over and covered her hand. Danielle, it's okay, he whispered. This is about keeping me, and Jamie, safe from Noah, not stopping you from seeing us. Tears slid down her cheeks. She nodded, defeated. As the magistrate granted the injunction, Billy let out a relieved sigh. Outside the courtroom, Danielle waited in silence. Theo approached her. Come home with us, he offered quietly. Let's figure this out together. She hesitated, then nodded, leaning into him. For a fleeting moment, there was hope that old wounds might heal. Back on the cobbles, Noah Headley watched the courthouse doors close behind the small group. His lip curled in contempt. He strode away with deliberate steps, pulling out his phone. I'll see you soon, he murmured, though to whom, it was unclear. His next move had to be more devious: legal alliances, media leaks, social manipulation. He was determined to tip the balance back in his favor. That evening, under the pretense of peace, Theo and Danielle joined Todd and Billy for a quiet dinner at Speeddale. Eileen and George arrived shortly after, bearing a homemade chocolate cake. The thick coconut-scented icing reminded Theo of better times, birthdays shared in laughter, candlelit wishes whispered in the dark. They sat in the corner booth, the group's warmth offsetting the chill of the night outside. As they ate, Danielle reached across the table and grasped Theo's hand. I'm sorry, she said, voice trembling. I didn't realize how far it would go. Theo squeezed her fingers. We'll move forward. Together. Billy raised his coffee cup. To family, in all its forms. Todd clinked his glass against George's. The toast echoed like a vow, binding them against any storm Noah might brew. Yet storms had a way of arriving unannounced. 2 nights later, Billy and Todd arrived at the community center to prepare for a film screening, an uplifting documentary about LGBTQ+ youth resilience. The projector hummed, the snack table glowed with popcorn and soda. Volunteers busied themselves in the foyer. Outside, the street lay quiet. Inside the hall, the lights dimmed. The film began, drawing a modest but engaged crowd. Midway through, however, a commotion erupted at the back. A man in a trench coat, hood pulled low, illuminated by the flickering screen, had slipped in. He flashed his phone's camera at the screen, broadcasting the film live to some hidden channel. The audience murmured in confusion. Before anyone could react, the intruder bolted, slipping out through the side door. Billy froze the film. "Stop it," he called, rushing to the aisle. "Who are you?" But the only answer was the echo of his own footsteps and the flicker of the paused projector. Todd joined him, scanning the foyer. Nothing. The group regathered, unsettled. Eileen's face was pale. George draped an arm around her. "It's someone testing us," he muttered. "Trying to intimidate." Later, Todd reviewed the footage from the foyer camera. The figure's gait, the trench coat, the quick hand gestures, everything screamed Noah. But proof was elusive. They could press charges for trespass, but would that be enough? Or would it simply provoke him further? One evening, George found a message scrawled in red marker on the community center door. "Sinners will burn." Beneath, a crudely drawn arrow led to a dark alley behind the building. George's fingers trembled as he called Billy. Together, they organized a security rota, volunteers to patrol during events, cameras to monitor blind spots. Todd joined too, his protective instinct ever heightened. Theo, meanwhile, felt the pressure mounting. Each time Jamie boarded the school bus, he watched until the yellow doors closed. Each night, he checked the locks twice, staring at the window until sleep claimed him. Danielle tried to comfort him, but her own past with Noah, his manipulative charm, his veiled threats, stirred fresh trauma. They decided to move in with Todd at the Grimshaw household, consolidating their strength. At number 3 Coronation Street, Eileen and George cleared out a spare room, repainting it soft blue. A second-hand desk and chair made their way upstairs, bright curtains were hung to filter summer light. "We'll make a proper home," Eileen said, smoothing the freshly painted walls. George smiled, but worry lingered in his eyes. "As long as we stay vigilant." Then came the break-in. Late one night, Billy awoke to a crash below. Grabbing his robe, he crept downstairs to find the front door ajar, the vicarage hall's windows smashed, and a lone speaker lying in the mud, playing a distorted recording of Noah's sermons. Fear seized Billy's heart. He dashed outside, finding mud-stained footprints leading down the cobbled lane. He called the police and then raced next door to Todd and Theo's flat. Todd opened his door bleary-eyed. "What?" Billy gasped. "They attacked the hall. Someone's trying to terrorize us." Theo joined them in the hallway, face drawn. "This is escalating." Todd reached for Billy's shoulder. "We'll get through this. We have to." Over the next week, the community rallied. Susan Bullough and Asha Allahan spearheaded a Stand Up for Love vigil in Victoria Park. George lent his carpentry skills to erect a makeshift stage. Eileen baked dozens of cupcakes for the gathering. Billy and Danielle coordinated speakers, including Theo himself, who agreed to share his story. On the night of the vigil, torches flickered in the gathering dusk as hundreds of residents, pride flags aloft, filled the park's central lawn. At the podium, Theo's voice trembled at first. He spoke of love's endurance, of the right to live authentically, and of the danger of silence in the face of hatred. Todd and Danielle watched from below, tears glistening in their eyes. When Theo concluded, the crowd erupted into applause, the thunder of solidarity rolling through the park. For a moment, they had victory. The following morning, headlines in the Weatherfield Gazette blared, "Controversial preacher targets LGBTQ+ community." The story detailed the park vigil, the break-in, and quoted Theo's impassioned speech. A smaller inset interview with Noah claimed he was merely offering pastoral care, and labeled his critics as intolerant agitators. The Gazette's editor refused to publish Billy's letter rebutting Noah's distortions. Todd slammed the paper onto the kitchen table in exasperation. "They won't let us have our say." Billy shrugged. "But they can't erase what they heard last night." Danielle unfolded her own copy, eyebrows knit. "This is turning into a media circus. Noah's playing both sides, martyring himself to his followers while stirring panic in the press." Theo ran a hand through his hair. "He's doing everything he can to isolate me and us. But he underestimates our community." Eileen entered, carrying a tray of tea. "We need to keep pushing back. More public events, social media campaigns, letters to editors, everything." George set his coffee down. "And the police? Any leads on the break-in?" Billy shook his head. "They're investigating, but they need proof. We don't even know who the hooded figures were. CCTV cameras were disabled." A heavy silence fell. Then Todd stood. "Then we give them proof. We'll set up our own cameras. We'll record everything Noah says from now on. No more unmonitored gatherings." That weekend, at the community center, a new event unfolded, a live-streamed Q&A between local leaders and LGBTQ+ advocates. The hall bristled with cameras, phone cameras, handheld camcorders, and even a small tripod-mounted DSLR. The premise: open dialogue, transparency, and truth. Billy chaired the forum, gently demanding respect and clarity. Danielle spoke of parental rights. George and Eileen offered their perspective as grandparents and as neighbors. Todd and Theo, hand in hand, recounted their ordeal and called for compassion. When Noah appeared, flanked by his own crew filming every moment, the contrast was stark. His opening gambit, a sterile argument about spiritual freedom, crumbled under relentless questioning about his methods, his language, his threats. At one point, a local reporter challenged him with the recording of the park sermon. Noah's voice faltered as the room echoed with his own words. "Homosexuality is the greatest threat to the sanctity of our moral fiber." The footage played in loop, each playback draining his composure further. Finally, he stormed off the stage, abruptly cutting the live stream. A ripple of murmurs and applause followed. In the aftermath, the Q&A's recording exploded online, shared across community groups and local news sites. Public sentiment shifted decisively against Noah's cause. In the quiet that followed, weathered nerves began to calm. At number 3, the spare room welcomed Danielle and Jamie. The laughter of children playing video games echoed down the corridor, as Theo and Todd watched from the doorway, contented smiles on their faces. Even Billy allowed himself a moment of peace, sipping tea in the vicarage garden as sunlight danced on the flower beds. As night fell across the cobbles, the community of Coronation Street stood at the threshold of a new chapter, vigilant, united, and bound by a promise to protect one another, whatever darkness lay ahead. And in the silence between the rows of terraced houses, the wind carried the echo of their resolve, a whispered vow that love, above all, would endure.